Secrets from a Coach. Thrive and maximise your potential in the evolving workplace. Your weekly podcast with Debbie Green of Wishfish and Laura Thompson-Staveley of Phenomenal Training.
How you doing?
I'm all set, raring to go. Fresh year, new me, Debs. I'm going to be a totally new person. How about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I don't ever be a new person. I think I'm going to aim to be a better person than I am. Still me, but with better. I think that's what I'm aiming at for this new year.
But Debs, how tempting is it to have this kind of brand new me?
Yeah.
I'm going to be totally different and set yourself up for actually what can be a bit of a depressing reality check in a couple of weeks' time. And,
Yeah.
which I guess is why we wanted to focus in this first month of the new year on an opportunity mindset.
Yeah.
4 episodes that are looking at opportunity and creating a good mindset that lends itself to set yourself up for success from 4 slightly different perspectives. And this one is all about setting goals.
Mm-hmm.
Debs,
Yeah.
how hot is the topic of goal setting in the world of professional development?
It is like, should be, and it is top of the tree. If you haven't got a goal that you're aiming for, whether it's big, small, little, medium, large, long, whatever, then actually you're not necessarily setting yourself up for success, I think. And now more than ever is when people take a moment and reflect and say, okay, what is it that I want to achieve for myself for this coming year? And goal setting has been around for however long, right, Law? And it's just one of those things that we look at and we go, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this, do that, which is why I don't do resolutions, by the way. So if anybody's saying, I'm going to set myself a New Year's resolution, I guarantee you won't be on it by the end of January. So this is a better way of doing it, where we're really consciously thinking about what is it that I want to achieve? How might I achieve that? What might get in the way? What lessons might have learned from last year? And so you're really prepared as much as possible to be able to head forward into the new year, knowing that you've got some really good goals set, that you've set yourself, which are super important to you and that you are committed to doing.
So, Debs, this is almost a little bit like a quarterly trip to the dental hygienist.
Oh my gosh.
Almost, isn't it?
Oh my God, I love that. It is, Law.
To sort of get in all those nooks and crannies where you there's some old ideas that are stuck in there, and actually you just need to get a bit of a fresh perspective, and it's almost like a mental hygienist trip, isn't it? It's about thinking, right, what do I actually really want? And interestingly, I think there needs to be a bit of a health warning around goal setting, because when it's good, it's very, very good. So let's say someone sets a goal, they meet that goal, it's exhilarating.
Yeah.
But when it's bad, it can be very, very bad. So what happens if someone sets a goal, it doesn't get met? At the best, that's tiring and exhausting. At the very worst, that can be really depressing, and it can really knock your confidence and just knock the stuffing out of you a little bit. For example, someone that I mentor regularly, they've had on their kind of goal list for quite a while now to get promoted.
Mm-hmm.
But there are such a huge amount of variables that are caught up in that goal. At what point actually does that goal become demotivating? At what point does someone think, actually, it's been 3 years now that I've wanted to get promoted this year, it hasn't happened? Do I stay? Do I go? And at what point actually do you have to think about goals maybe in a slightly different way? So I think there should be a bit of a health warning around goals, because people can really beat themselves up, can't they? If there are goals that they've set in their mind, and it might have been a whim of an idea that might have suited you, way back when. But actually letting go of goals can be quite liberating, or letting go of the right ones that you need to let go of.
And you go, right, okay. And therefore, how do you start to break it down? But also, people set themselves up for failure sometimes. So, and it's that bit that says, initially, I always encourage people to think about the goal that they're setting themselves. First of all, what's the desire? So how desirable is this goal that they want to achieve? Like you were saying, your person has wanted promotion and they are working towards it. But if they'd set themselves that hard target that said, I want to be promoted in 3 years, and it hasn't happened, it can be really, as you said, really demotivating. So I always sort of say to people, think about the goal that you want to set yourself and make sure that it's within your skill level initially, because there are things that we are in control of that we can already do super well. That means we don't necessarily have to go way, way out of our comfort zones, into our stretch zone, into our panic zone, because we're having to completely change everything about us. And so therefore setting goals that are within your skill level with a little bit of stretch actually enables you to achieve it better. So rather than set yourself up to earning £1 million in 3 months, actually in your skill level, can you physically do that? Are you realistically able to do that? Probably not. So don't set yourself up for failure right from the off. Bring it back to the clarity. As we would say, create clarity around that goal as to what it is you really, really want to achieve, and breaking it down into those, if you like, micro goals that enable you to achieve them because they're in your skill level. And therefore, once you've achieved that, it gives you a boost, lifts you up, you feel more confident. You, as you said, you think, oh, I can do this. And then you do the next goal, which may be a little bit more of a stretch. But because you've already done something successful, you're more likely to achieve that next step. So the more we can break it down into smaller, achievable steps within your skill level will enable you to have a win. And then you've built a more on your skill level. So that skill level is getting wider and then wider. And before you know it, you've got to wherever you need to get to be able to achieve that goal. So that's something we always encourage people to do.
I think that is such a refreshing take on goal setting, Debs, about matching your skill level. Because it's not about being defeatist, is it?
No.
It's about generating momentum, and then momentum that then means at some point there is so much energy that you've then created. It's inevitable that at some point you're going to get promoted. You might not be able to predict that it's going to be by September, and it might not even be in your current organisation. But if you can know that actually I'm going to set a goal that from next week's team meeting, I'm going to start acting in a slightly different way. What does that mean tangibly? I'm going to start asking what opportunities are there to stretch the team even further. Whereas previously I might have just kept quiet and not put my hand up to, for example, accept offers to be, to do some presentations, for example. So I think that's such a smart way of looking at goal setting, matching your skill level to then be able to achieve it, accomplish it, and then that starts to create a chain of events.
Absolutely, because then your skill level it gets better and increases because you're becoming more competent at it, right? And therefore you have more of an awareness. So therefore your brain has caught up with this new habit you formed, if you want to call it that, or new goal that you've achieved in that bit. And therefore your body sort of follows through and goes, I can do this. I've done it last week. I can do that again in my team meeting. I can stand up. I can interject. And then you get more comfortable. And therefore, the more comfortable you are, the more you want to do it. And before you know it, if you look back sort of 6 weeks, go 6 weeks, then look backwards. Oh my God, I never thought. And this is why we have to consciously think about reviewing what it is we're doing. And I know you talk a lot about taking a moment, Laura, to review what am I going to take forward and what am I not. So it'd be good to hear your thoughts on that, Laura.
Debs, practicing the art of reviewing. Now, I think I've done a lot of learning from you actually around the power of reflection and reviewing, because my nature tends to be run really, 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 really fast until something goes wrong and you have to stop. Right. And actually what I've then learned is if you review along the way, you're going to make sure that you're pointing all of that energy and channeling it in the best direction. And how do I even know what goals to set in the year ahead until I've taken a bit of time to work out what have I enjoyed, what have I not enjoyed, what has felt like a struggle, what actually might have been a really hard graft but was really satisfying. And you can't just sometimes dream up great goals about what you want to do in the future until you've done a bit of turning around and reflecting on what's worked in your past. So there are a couple of exercises that I like to do with myself that I've developed over the last 10 years or so, which I kind of did because I was going through a challenging time in my life with lots of stuff that potentially was going to, be overwhelming. And I found it quite comforting to just sit, turn the world off for 1 or 2 hours, a cup of tea, pint of water, open page in front of me, and just do some reflecting. Now, even just getting that 2 hours of uninterrupted space might take you a couple of weeks to create an environment in your diary where you can carve that out. Depends how sort of full on and how many responsibilities you have in your life at the moment. But to be there and to think about, actually, what are some of my highlights? So highlights can also be the tough times as well. And I know you've got some reflection questions you'll take us through in a moment. But the first step, I think, before setting goals that motivate is to understand what actually have I found motivating or demotivating before in the past. And if actually umpteen years have now gone by with me saying, I'm going to learn the piano.
I remember when you got your piano, Law.
Absolutely. But if actually that has created a whole load of angst and a whole load of kind of, self-doubt because you haven't done that particular goal, then is it time to kind of let that one go and come up with something sort of new? So the first stage, I like things in 3 steps, Debs, is review. Highlight some of those highs and lows of the year or the 6 months to then work out the second stage, which is deciding what do you want more of or less of, and what might that mean in terms of the goals you want to point yourself towards, a general direction that you want for the year ahead, and to then set some kind of plan. And my own character, I need some fence lines, boundaries, boxes. A lot of my planning techniques are all around kind of putting in boxes and discipline, because left to my own devices, I wouldn't do anything. I would just sit around watching TV all day long. I mean, I would, which is fine for holiday and kind of leisure, but actually at some point that doesn't have that sense of sort of meaning and satisfaction. So Debs, I know you've found some great questions that have really helped you and our team as well to review, which is the first step of to set motivating goals. You've got to understand what am I actually motivated by, and the best indicator of your future motivators are going to be reflecting on your past. What has or hasn't worked for me so far? So what could be some questions, Debs, that you think really can help set us up?
There's loads out there, but the ones that I've sort of I've used and have been really helpful, as you said, just to stop and think, is it's always been around gratitude. So my first question would be, so what are you grateful for right now? So just taking that moment to think about, what are you grateful for? And it could be anything, big, small, as I say, it's got to be relevant for you. So whatever that might be. And then the other one that I really love is, so what was it that took you by surprise in the year before? What were those moments, as you said, whether it was a good thing, a bad thing, whatever, it's still a little bit of, mate, I've taken you by surprise, but you haven't just got there just by luck. Probably you've got there because you have put a plan in place, or you consciously carved out that 2-hour time somewhere where you focused on you and what you did want to achieve. So even though it took us by surprise and you go, oh my God, when you break it down, actually it did take planning, and it did take time, and it did take commitment, but being really clear on what the goal was. It might have been an idea to start with, but actually once you'd achieved it, then great. And I know I use this, wasn't it, with my thoughts cards, as you always said, I put a thought out every day, and I'd always wanted to turn them into little hard to things that you could look at, and it happened. And I look back and went, oh yeah, I made that happen, but it didn't just happen by luck. There was a plan in place. So I think we have to never underestimate the benefit of a plan. And then what surprises do you want? What surprised you, as I said, in your previous year, which is something you weren't expecting, maybe, and then what did you really set out to achieve, and did you actually achieve any of them or some of them? And I know I went through my one as well, and there were a couple of things that I had wanted to achieve in the previous year, and I'd done 3 out of the 6 of them, completely achieved them, and the others were like half a little tick, and there was a little quarter tick in one of them. But they help you to go, okay, so what was it that got in the way? What was it that helped you achieve it? What would you do differently next time? How could you improve upon that? What investment are you going to make in yourself in order to keep moving forward? What lessons have you taken from that? So there are all those lovely, I suppose, those lovely open questions, the what and the how questions, that will really help you with that.
In the pursuit of what can I savour, as the Stoics would call it, rather than dwelling on the negatives, what can I savour from actually some of the things that might not have been easy in the previous year? But you can't Google your own motivating goals. You can
No.
only do it by sifting through either your recent or your past,
Yeah.
and then thinking, actually, what do I want more of or less of? So I think
Yeah.
there's some brilliant reflective questions.
Yeah.
And the thing I think is interesting about in the rapidly evolving world of work, so goal setting, but you're far more likely to help others set motivating goals for themselves if you are looking motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So these tools, whether I can't think of a Word document that could be out there, or any document that is out there that could force someone to be motivated. So this isn't a process in terms of your documentation. I mean, some people like to have it written down or recorded, but it's the process of going through that reflection, that deciding, and then that planning. So what am I going to do? That's where the magic happens.
It is, because as you said, if you're in a team, you can't motivate people per se, but you can create the right environment that enables them to feel motivated to want to deliver. So if you're having some fun in the creation of the goals that individual wants to set, then that's going to help them. You're tapping into their desire and their commitment and their belief and what that looks like from their map of the world. And if you're smart enough to be able to tap into their creativity and tap into their fun side, then you'll be amazed at what sort of things people come up with when it does come to setting their goals. As you said, some like them written down rigid, others just like them drawn, some like them in a vision board that people sometimes do for the whole year where there's no dates on it at all. It's just, this is what I'm aiming towards. There is so many ways we can get creative. And if you're their manager helping them, get creative as well, even for yourself. It makes a huge difference. I would say you're like the navigator for them, because they've got to want to do it. You can't make them do anything that they don't really want to do, because if you're always, and this was something that was really stuck out to me, if you're only ever going to focus on improvement, you're going to set yourself up for failure. For me, it's always about celebrating the progress you've made and then focusing on the continuing that new goal or that change of the goal or making some tweaks to it. So it's not always about improvement. It can be about continuation as well.
I think that's a really interesting one. Because there's only so much weight you can lose. There's only so much that you can then keep doing again and again and again. And why do you need to improve? Well, it might be because you've let something slip that you shouldn't have. So I think that's quite interesting but it might not feel as exciting as a continuation goal, which is why we'll look at some goal setting tools and acronyms in our kind of final aspect of this. Just some things to then help market to yourself, because what a goal does, Debs, and this is what I think it boils down to, is having a goal in mind keeps you genuinely pointing in the direction that you ultimately want to be facing in. In the words of Katy Perry in her song Raw, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. So if you have zero goals, you are very vulnerable to the moods and the news that is happening around you that you may not agree with or you may not buy into. So you're more vulnerable to being influenced by other people if you have nothing in your mind that you're standing for and you're putting time against. The other benefit, I think, is it enables you to nudge and remind yourself in those little moments of choice. For example, recording this podcast episode right now. Because I know I've set an intention of standing up more this year, I saw that little post-it note and went, oh, I'll stand up for this one. Whereas left to my own devices, I would have forgotten and just carried on sitting. And it would have been yet another day sitting in a chair. So having that bigger goal then enabled me in that moment to go, oh yeah, I said I was going to stand up more. Well, this is an opportunity now to stand up. And then it enables you to focus on the opportunity that might have been lurking beyond your radar because you were so busy you didn't see it. And then suddenly you're more likely to spot that opportunity to come along to a meeting, to start to get involved a little bit more in a wider stakeholder network. Put your hand up for maybe a conference that's coming up where you might not want to speak, but you know you need to speak in order to achieve that longer term goal. So I think goals just set your mental radar up to spot stuff that otherwise you might have been too busy or stressed to have noticed.
Definitely.
And it just keeps your eyes on that bigger picture.
And if you've got a visual reminder, all the better. as you said, because we're so moving so fast in the world of work that we don't stop and pause enough. And if you're working from home a lot, that you haven't got the commute time in inverted commas. So I know we always speak about this, if you're working out of your home office, how do you build in that thinking time? And not just get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and hit your laptop straight off. Maybe get up at 7, do something, but do a focused hour, which would be your commute normally. So again, it's all these different things we can do. Don't put off tomorrow what you can do today, right? And those visual little reminders that you were saying can be a huge help to people. I know someone I've coached at the end of their year has just set out their intent for the next quarter. They've actually taken a screenshot of what they wanted and they put it on their phone. So it comes up as their screensaver, just as that visual reminder, which makes a huge difference.
Brilliant. And then you're watching your own trailer rather than just consuming someone else's entertainment.
Absolutely.
I think that is a brilliant idea. And of course, with all of this handheld technology we've got now, there are so many different nudge tools that we can use to kind of keep our eyes on that sort of bigger picture. And I think for our final bit, we're just going to look at some classic ways, some tools, some models, some concepts that can either help set your own goals clear in your mind that are motivating for you. Also, there could be some approaches you want to do with someone else. So, Debs, I've got a brand new one for you.
Oh my God, I love new. Go on, Law. What is it?
It's 5 letters, SMART. Have you ever heard of the SMART objective setting tool? How many decades
boring.
between us all and our listeners have we sat and looked at a PowerPoint slide that talks about SMART goal setting?
Oh my God. Too many to even consider, and everybody rolls their eyes and go, when someone says no, I haven't, you're like jumping on them going, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. But yeah, it's been around a while.
It's been
go
around.
On then. You've got a different one though, haven't you?
We've got a slightly different one. So for those of you that do like the old school SMART goal setting, I mean, you can't go too wrong with it. In short, you're far more likely to meet a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and got some kind of time or target attached to it. So you might be working with a SMART-based objective setting document, for example, in your place of work. Actually, what we quite like, Debs, is the SPOT objective setting tool.
Tell us more, Law.
The SPOT tool is that in order to spot the opportunity, it's about using SPOT as a way of setting your goals. So your objective might be your mini steps that lead you towards an overall goal that enable you to achieve an aim that you might have in mind. So let's say someone aims to be promoted. We've already talked about that there's a load of variables behind that. So who knows the exact month you might get that letter through, but it's a general aim that you're working towards. So a goal might be to increase visibility, to do some more stakeholder working, just to elevate the level that you're working at. So your objective might be specific things to do around meetings, getting involved in stuff. So that's just how very simply all of these words, they sort of seem interchangeably, but I guess it's working like a bit of a small to a larger perspective.
Yeah.
And SPOT is a handy way to just channel all of that energy and all of those things that someone could do. And rather than it being overwhelming, you channel that into some kind of plan. And SPOT stands for, the S is stretching and significant. So does it excite you? Does it energize you?
It's got to do that, Law.
Yeah. If you think, oh God, I don't know if I actually want to be promoted, then you're never going to achieve that.
No, you won't.
So the first, the S is it stretching and significant? And I think just a word of caution, as you were saying about matching the skill set. So if you are 1 week into a role and you think the company is going to be going under in 6 months' time, then it would be a bit, it might not be significant to then aim for promotion because the company might not be around. So it enables you to just work out, actually, I must set in the right kind of goal. The positive, the P stands for positive. So rather than thinking less time wasted on my inbox, it's more time spent creating documents or whatever that might be. So positive. So rather than aiming for less of, which is difficult to see, it's aiming for more of. The O stands for observable. So in reality, what does that tangibly mean? And then timed. So if it's difficult to predict when the goal might be met, when can you start it? So a great SPOT goal for someone that wants to get promoted, for example, might be to set yourself some stretch around increasing your visibility, to do more of certain things. That's a positive. how might that tangibly look? Well, this time in a month's time, then what would your day-to-day working habits look like compared to now? And then when's that going to start? So that could start this afternoon by emailing someone or picking up the phone, having a chat with someone, which already then starts to suggest to you, I'm putting some balls are in motion. I'm kind of creating a chain of events.
Yeah, and I really love that law, though it's not the end time. It's not in 6 months or whatever. It's the time to start now. I love the way you flip that into, okay, well, I could do it now. Yeah, that's your time starts now, right? Because as you said, there may be so many variables that will come along and knock you off course. And that's why it's not about them beating yourself up. It's about continuation. It's about, right, okay, what am I learning? What do I need to do differently? Let me get back on that horse and let me just ride back through with maybe a different route. But it's all of these time for self and planning. I think I think planning, even though whether you love it or hate it, even if you write on the back of a fag packet or a napkin or whatever, that's your plan. That might be your plan on a page. And I know we've done many plans on a page that have been on the back of a post-it. So
Absolutely. And I do think, Des, we've talked a lot about time because time management, workload management are such hot topics for so many people at the moment. But I do think there's something quite refreshing when you flip time. So the refreshing aspect of rather than the end drop date for a goal being met, it's the start date for when that goal is starting to be worked towards.
Yeah, I love that.
You can control that. I've found over the years that whenever I'm running career visioning workshops, when you ask people rather than, and how many years have you worked in your current place? Which, yes, that has value, but actually it's far more invigorating to ask people. And approximately how many years do you imagine of work is ahead of you?
Yeah.
That sure gets people thinking differently about it.
does.
Because if you've got someone saying probably about another 30 years, then that really points to having confidence around doing things that enable you to maybe think a bit differently about your career. Because 30 years is a long time feeling like you're not properly maximising your potential. Equally, if someone is saying, actually, I've probably got about 6 or 7 years yet till that, it really motivates you to then go out on a bang. So I think there's sometimes some quite, from an opportunity point of view, just flipping how we talk about time.
Yeah.
And if typically you've been the type of person that has set goals where the tick happens when the goal is done, if actually that is not always motivated you, could you flip it? Actually, let me tick for the tick is when the goal gets started.
Absolutely.
And I create a chain of events where it's so easy for me to keep that goal going. Then I know that I'm much more likely to lead towards that aspect of heading in the direction where I want to arrive at.
I love that. And as you say, you can spot the opportunity to make it happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Debs, when we think about the week ahead, what might be your very first call to action for this new year?
Yes.
I'll have a think about the share the secret.
Yes.
And in the meantime, this was the first part of our four-part focus looking at opportunity mindset. So our goal was to take a slightly different approach around this big topic. So setting ourselves up for success by looking at opportunity. This one has been all about setting goals that motivate us. And next week, we're going to be focusing about keeping optimistic during challenge, which is a really nice kind of response to this one that we've done in this episode. So what would be your call to action, Debs?
My call to action, there's so many that you could do, but I think that where you are right now, take that moment to reflect, where am I right now? Where do I want to be? And not necessarily to put a time frame on it, as you said, but then thinking about, okay, well, if I'm here now, what are my lessons? So take that time to just give yourself that hour, 2 hours, sit quietly, work it out, and then go, where do I want to be? And then write down the things you'd like to be or where you would want to be with no time frames, and then reflect on it and go, okay, so what can I start today that was going to enable me to move towards where I want to be? And then that would be my starter, because you can do it. And it does impact on your mind health. So, your mental hygienist can then review you every quarter. So make sure you've booked in an appointment with yourself.
Oh, I love it, Debs. Nice link. Open wide. Open wide, let the mental hygienists do their thing. And my share the secret would be a slightly different take, actually. So my share the secret normally involves getting another person involved in on it.
Yeah.
So there's a bit more kind of energy, or kind of co-learning. Actually, I might suggest a slightly different accountability buddy. So do some kind of accountability check-in with your future self.
Nice.
So the share the secret might be, off the back of that call to action, what's going to be your timed trigger that either sets up, for example, as a reminder on your calendar, that then reminds you to check in on the intention that you've set. So the share the secret is sharing the secret with your future self.
Oh,
so
I like
what could
that.
you set in as a bit of a timed reminder off that call to action, so that when you then do that check-in, you can then acknowledge the progress that you have made and then adjust where necessary. So that would be my share the secret. Share the secret with your future self.
I love that. I love that. Oh my God. I feel very fired up now, ready to sort of really think about it and get my goal set.
Absolutely. So, Ms. Green, if you'd like to make an appointment for your next dental hygienist.
Be about 4 months, Laura. Is that all right with you?
That's more than all right. So, Debs, have a fantastic week.
You too, lovely.
May you focus on opportunity and be motivated in your goals. And I'll see you at the next episode, where we're talking all about keeping optimistic through challenge.
Super important. Lots of love to you as well. Have a good week.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.